The Galactic Council's dark decision. The silence of space was broken only by the hum of the Galactic Council's massive fleet, a fleet of ships that ruled over hundreds of planets and countless star systems, made up of different alien races who thought they had it all. They had power, they had control, but what they didn't have was foresight. In the Grand Council Hall, alien leaders from every corner of the galaxy sat in their towering seats, watching holograms of different planets and fleets. These beings were ancient, their skin glistening in shades of blue, green, and silver, their eyes glowing with cold intellect. They spoke in soft, calculated voices, each one more confident than the last. They believed that nothing could touch them until they made a decision that would change everything. The humans have become a threat, High Counselor Thrax of the Cthulhians said, his voice sharp, cold. Their fleet is growing. Their technology is advanced. If we do not strike now, we may lose control over them. The others murmured in agreement. Earth had always been a wild card. For centuries, humanity had been seen as nothing more than a primitive species, one they could keep in check with ease. But now, things were different. Humanity had begun to make waves in the galaxy, expanding faster than anyone had predicted. They had built a fleet capable of standing up to the best of the Council's forces, and they had discovered new technologies that even the most advanced alien races didn't fully understand. Agreed, said Ylra, the Slothari diplomat, her silver face unreadable. But how do we deal with them? A direct attack may provoke a war, and we know how unpredictable their responses can be. Direct attack is not the answer, said Zoran, the leader of the Vokuri. His tentacles shifted uneasily. But if we show them their place, if we break their will, perhaps they will fall into line. A wave of murmurs filled the room. What Zoran suggested was nothing less than terrifying. The idea of breaking humanity wasn't just about defeating them in battle. It was about destroying their spirit, their belief that they could overcome anything. The Council had dealt with countless civilizations, but the humans, they were different. They had something the others didn't, unpredictable willpower and a deep, almost stubborn sense of survival. We don't need to destroy them physically, Thrax said, his voice slow and calculating. We need to break them psychologically. We'll take one of their own, a child, a human child. They love their young with a passion unmatched by any other species. If we torture one of their own, it will make them bend. And when they beg for mercy, we will show them their place. A deadly silence followed his words. The Council knew the cruelty of the Cthulhians, but this idea, it was beyond their normal operations. Some of the Council members shifted in their seats, unsure of what they were hearing. But then, as Thrax's words settled into the minds of the others, a chilling realization took hold. He was right. A human child. The Council had always underestimated the depth of the bond between humans and their young. If they took one, humanity would be forced to comply, wouldn't they? Zoran, after a long pause, nodded slowly. It will work. If we do this, they will know their place. The decision was made. The Council would send its soldiers to Earth, and a child would be taken. The plan was set in motion without any hesitation. No one could have imagined the horrors that would come next. Back on Earth, things were still calm. The blue planet spun quietly in the vastness of space, unaware of the horrors approaching. No one knew that their peaceful world was about to be shattered. On a quiet farm in the Midwest, a young girl named Lily was playing with her dog in the grass. She was laughing, the sun shining down on her blonde hair as she ran in circles. Her father, a soldier in the Earth Defense Force, had just left for another mission. Her mother was inside, baking cookies, smiling at the peace that filled their home. But Lily's life was about to change forever. Suddenly, the sky darkened. A shadow passed over the earth. Lily's dog barked loudly, sensing something wrong. And in an instant, everything changed. A massive fleet of ships descended from the sky. These ships were nothing like anything humanity had ever seen. They were alien, sleek and deadly, with dark, jagged shapes that seemed to pulse with power. Lily froze, her heart racing. She saw the ships coming down, not knowing who or what they were. Then, as if the world had stopped, a group of alien soldiers appeared, their cold black eyes scanning the landscape. Without warning, they stormed her family's farm, tearing through the house. Her mother screamed, and her father's voice echoed in the distance, calling out for help. But no one was there to hear. The soldiers took Lily. They didn't care for her cries or the panic in her mother's voice. They simply took her, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. Back on the Council's flagship, the decision was already beginning to feel right. They had succeeded in taking the child, and with her, they believed they had won. The human race would bow down to their might. They would be no more than puppets in the hands of the Galactic Council. The war, they thought, was over before it had even begun. But they were wrong. Humanity had just begun to wake up to the horror that was about to unfold. The Galactic Council had made the mistake of underestimating the power of a mother's love, the strength of a father's rage, and the unstoppable force of humanity's thirst for justice. And when that force was unleashed, nothing, absolutely nothing, could stop it. The awakening of Earth's hidden power. The Galactic Council had made a grave mistake. They believed that by taking one human child, they could shatter the entire human race. They thought humanity would cower, begging for mercy, and falling into line with the Council's will. But they didn't understand the true power that Earth possessed, nor did they understand how deeply rooted the human spirit was. On Earth, the news of Lily's abduction spread like wildfire. It didn't matter where you were, whether you were on the crowded streets of New York or in the remote villages of the African savannah. The message was the same. A human child had been taken. And this time, humanity would not stand idly by. Lily's parents, like thousands of others, had always believed that humanity was weak in the grand scheme of the galaxy. But they were wrong. Deep within Earth's governments, there had always been something hidden, a secret force. For generations, humanity had been preparing, building a fleet so advanced, so powerful, that not even the Galactic Council could have imagined its existence. This fleet was Earth's last line of defense, a line that had never been crossed until now. Captain Elena Ramirez, a decorated war hero, stood before a group of top military officials. Her face was cold, and her voice was firm, but her heart was filled with rage. She had seen the terror in the eyes of the people when they learned of the Galactic Council's attack. She knew that the Council had made a deadly mistake by taking Lily. "Gather the fleet," Captain Ramirez ordered, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. "This ends now." Her words were not just a call for military action. They were a promise. The fleet would be ready. The humans had been patient for too long, but they were not weak. They would not bow to the Council's cruelty. As the military leaders scrambled to assemble Earth's secret fleet, the people on the streets felt a strange surge of hope. Whispers spread that the fleet was awakening. Some dismissed it as rumors, but deep down, they all knew the truth. Earth had been hiding something. They had prepared for something unimaginable. Far beyond Earth's atmosphere, in the dark reaches of space, the fleet slowly powered up. These ships were not like the outdated ships of the past, nor were they like the Council's sleek, intimidating warships. Earth's fleet was different. These ships were designed for one thing: to protect humanity and to strike back when it was needed most. The fleet's commander, Admiral John Parker, stood on the bridge of the flagship, his eyes scanning the holomap in front of him. His expression was grim, yet resolute. The fleet had been dormant for so long, hidden from the eyes of the galaxy. But now, they were all about to take the fight to the Galactic Council. "Coordinates locked in," the officer said, her voice steady. "We're ready for launch, Admiral." Admiral Parker nodded. "Prepare the fleet. We're going to make sure the Galactic Council never forgets the name of humanity." The ships in Earth's fleet hummed with life, their engines igniting one by one. These ships were armed with weapons so advanced that the Galactic Council would be blindsided. They had thought humanity was weak, but now they were about to learn just how dangerous Earth could be. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Galactic Council's space, the leaders sat in their chambers, still feeling victorious over their conquest of the human child. They were too confident, too assured of their victory. They believed the human race would surrender, as they always had in the past. But they could not have been more wrong. "Report," High Counselor Thrax demanded. His voice was full of arrogance, believing the fight was already over. But as the report came in, his smug expression faltered. The human fleet had been spotted. It wasn't large, not yet, but it was moving with purpose, heading straight toward the heart of Council space. "What is this? Why haven't we received any reports from our outer stations?" Thrax growled, glaring at his officers. "They must have been hiding it," one of the officers replied, panic creeping into his voice. "It's a fleet we didn't even know existed, High Counselor. They're coming faster than we anticipated." The council leaders exchanged uncertain glances. The humans, the very species they had written off as weak and primitive, were fighting back. They had underestimated the humans' resolve, and now the consequences of their decision were beginning to unfold. Back on Earth, as the fleet gathered, the people of the planet watched in awe. They had always lived in the shadow of the council, never questioning their place in the galaxy. But now, they realized they had something the council didn't: the will to fight for their own. And this time, they weren't fighting to survive. They were fighting for justice. The fleet, led by Admiral Parker and Captain Ramirez, moved with precision toward the heart of the council's empire. Each ship was a beacon of humanity's defiance, each crew member a soldier of vengeance. The fleet wasn't just a military force. It was a symbol of humanity's refusal to bow to the powers of the galaxy. But the Council was not going to take this lightly. They had already begun assembling their forces, preparing for what they thought would be a swift, crushing retaliation. But no matter how much power the Council had, they could not have prepared for the wrath of humanity's hidden fleet. The time for diplomacy, for negotiations, had passed. Humanity had been pushed too far. And now, Earth's fleet was about to make its presence known in the most explosive way possible. The battle begins. The tension in the air was thick as Earth's fleet moved closer to the heart of Galactic Council space. It had been decades, centuries, even since humans had dared to make their presence felt on the galactic stage. But now, with their fleets on the move, humanity was determined to show the Council that they were not a species to be underestimated. Admiral Parker stood on the bridge of the flagship, his hands clenched into fists as he gazed at the star systems on the holomap in front of him. His ship was at the center of a massive fleet, hundreds of ships of varying sizes and designs, each one brimming with advanced weaponry and technology that the Council had never seen before. These were the fruits of humanity's hidden research, research that had been kept secret for the sole purpose of a day like today. "Admiral, the first Council ships are on the radar," reported one of the officers, her voice sharp and focused. Parker nodded grimly. The time for talk was over. The humans had tried to avoid conflict for so long, but now it was clear that their only option was to strike. The Council had gone too far. They had taken a child, tortured her, and believed that humanity would fall at their feet. They had made a mistake, a deadly one. "Prepare all ships for battle," Parker ordered. "Target their fleet, not their colonies. We're here for one thing only: revenge." As the ships readied their weapons, Captain Elena Ramirez moved to Parker's side. Her face was set, eyes burning with an unspoken fury. "This is it, Admiral. This is the payback we promised." Parker looked at her, nodding. "We have no choice now." They crossed the line. Far above, in the cold reaches of space, the Galactic Council was beginning to realize the enormity of their mistake. Thrax, the High Counselor, had ordered reinforcements, hoping to squash the rebellion before it could spread. But as the Earth fleet closed in on their territory, The Council was realizing that this was no simple skirmish. "This is madness," Thrax shouted as reports came in, showing Earth's fleet advancing at rapid speed. Why didn't we receive any intelligence about this hidden fleet? How could they have kept it secret for so long? Ylra, the Slathari diplomat, stood at a distance, her sharp, silver eyes calculating. "We underestimated them. We thought them weak, unprepared. But now they have power. Power we didn't see coming." Zoran, the Vokari leader, was already on his communicator, ordering his ships to position themselves for an immediate defense. "We cannot afford to be caught off guard. Prepare the weapons. This will be a fight like no other." On the front lines, the first clash between the two fleets was inevitable. The humans had arrived at the edge of Council space, and their weapons were more than ready to unleash their fury. "All ships, engage," Parker commanded, and in an instant, the space around them erupted into chaos. The hum of engines was replaced by the deafening roar of weapons fire. Explosions filled the air, lighting up the void of space with brilliant bursts of energy. The human fleet was fast, efficient, and deadly. Their ships, once thought to be primitive by the Council's standards, now moved with terrifying precision. Plasma cannons erupted from the human warships, striking Council vessels with unrelenting force. Shields flared and shattered under the sheer power of the human weaponry. Despite their technological superiority, the Council's forces were not prepared for the intensity of the human attack. Ships that were once considered invulnerable were now crumbling under the assault. The humans weren't here for mercy. They were here for revenge. The first Council ship, a massive cruiser, took a direct hit from a human battleship. The explosion sent shockwaves through space, tearing the ship apart. The destruction was so swift and brutal that it left the Council's fleet reeling. "That's one down," Ramirez muttered, her voice grim but determined. They didn't know what hit them. Back on Earth, the people watched in awe as the battle unfolded. News stations broadcasted the events live, and the world stood still, watching as their fleet clashed with the powerful forces of the Galactic Council. For the first time in centuries, the humans were no longer the prey. They were the predators. Around the globe, citizens cheered. It was a moment of triumph, a moment of defiance. They had waited for so long, and now the time had come for them to show the galaxy that humanity would not kneel. But even as humanity reveled in their moment of triumph, they knew that this was only the beginning. The Council would not give up easily. They would fight back with everything they had. And the war for the galaxy was just beginning. Back in the heart of the Council's empire, Thrax was fuming. His fleet was crumbling under the relentless assault of Earth's forces, and he couldn't understand how this was happening. His superior technology, his advanced ships, his vast fleet, all of it was being shattered by these humans. He had underestimated them, and now he was paying the price. "We need reinforcements now," Thrax roared to his subordinates. "We can't lose like this." But it was already too late. Earth's fleet was pressing forward with relentless force, their weapons cutting through the Council's ships like a knife through butter. There was no turning back. The Galactic Council had made its decision, and now they were facing the wrath of humanity. In the midst of the chaos, Admiral Parker stood tall on the bridge, his gaze unwavering. The battle was far from over, but the message was clear. Humanity had awoken. The Galactic Council had made the fatal mistake of underestimating the strength of the human spirit, and now they were about to learn the cost of that mistake. As the battle raged on, Earth's fleet pressed forward, knowing one thing for sure: there would be no surrender, no retreat, only victory. The Council strikes back. The human fleet had dealt a crushing blow to the Galactic Council's forces, but the victory was short-lived. The Council, shaken but not broken, was now in full retaliation mode. They had underestimated humanity once, and they would not make the same mistake twice. Their ships were already being reinforced, and new, more deadly weapons were being deployed. The battle had only just begun. Admiral Parker stood on the bridge of the flagship, eyes locked on the enemy ships ahead. His hands gripped the edge of his command console, and his face was tight with concentration. The previous victories had been important, but they were just the beginning. The real test was yet to come. "We've knocked them back for now," Captain Ramirez said, her voice steady. "But they're regrouping. It's not over yet." Parker nodded grimly. The Council was dangerous, and they had vast resources at their disposal. The humans were in for the fight of their lives. But one thing the Council didn't understand was the human will to survive. When pushed too far, humanity fought back with an intensity that no one in the galaxy could predict. Suddenly, the lights on the bridge dimmed. An alarm began to blare, and the crew members scrambled to their stations. "Admiral, we've detected massive energy readings," the communications officer reported. "The Council is deploying a new class of warship, something we've never seen before. It's big, and it's armed to the teeth." "Brace yourselves," Parker ordered, his voice unwavering. "They're about to hit us with everything they have." The massive Council ship emerged from behind a nearby moon, its silhouette dark against the stars. It was unlike anything the humans had encountered, a ship so enormous that it dwarfed anything in their fleet. Its weapons bristled with deadly power, and its engines roared to life with an ominous hum. "This is it," Captain Ramirez muttered under her breath. "This is their last stand." Meanwhile, in the heart of the Galactic Council, High Counselor Thrax paced back and forth in his private chamber. His face was a mask of fury. The loss of so many ships to the humans had been humiliating, and he knew that it was only a matter of time before the Earth fleet came for the heart of their empire. "We cannot allow this to continue," Thrax snarled. "Prepare the Doomsday Protocol. It's time to end this war, once and for all." The Doomsday Protocol was the Council's ultimate weapon, an ancient and devastating device that could wipe out entire planets in a single strike. It was a last resort, one that had never been used in the history of the Council, but in their desperation, Thrax was ready to unleash it. If the humans thought they could challenge the Council, they would soon learn just how much power the galaxy's ruling body possessed. Back in space, the first salvo from the new Council warship hit the human fleet with the force of 1,000 thunderstorms. The massive plasma blasts tore through space, striking one of the human ships dead center. The ship's shields flared and buckled, but the blast was too strong, and the ship erupted into a fireball of energy and debris. "One down," the officer at the weapons station called out. "But their shields are holding strong. They've adapted to our firepower." "Keep up the pressure," Admiral Parker ordered, his eyes narrowing. "We can't let them regroup. If we give them a chance, they'll crush us." The humans fought back with everything they had. Their ships fired relentlessly, but the Council ship was like a fortress. Each shot from the humans seemed to bounce off its shields, leaving no visible damage. The human fleet was outgunned and outclassed in terms of firepower, but their resilience and creativity had always been their greatest strength. As the battle raged, human ingenuity began to shine. Smaller, faster ships darted through the Council's defenses, using their agility to deliver precise strikes on weak points in the larger warship's armor. "Good work, team," Captain Ramirez said, her voice filled with determination. "We've found their weak spots. Keep targeting them." Back on Earth, the people were watching the battle unfold in real time. As the news reports came in, it was clear that the human fleet was facing an uphill battle. The Galactic Council's new warship was unlike anything the humans had ever encountered, and it seemed as though the Council might still have the upper hand. But the human spirit was unyielding. As families watched the chaos unfold on their screens, something extraordinary began to happen. People took to the streets, to the spaceships in their own local governments, and to any available platform they could find. They stood together, ready to fight, ready to defend their planet, and most importantly, ready to protect their children and families. "We're all in this together," a news anchor's voice echoed. "No one is backing down. This is our fight." The call to action reverberated across Earth. a unified force of people who would not surrender. Every single human alive now had a reason to fight, a reason to stand by their fleet and make sure the Galactic Council never threatened their kind again. Back in the heart of the battle, the tides were beginning to shift. The humans had found a way through the Council's defenses. Their new strategy, targeting weak points, was paying off. The Council's warship, once thought invincible, began to show signs of damage. "Admiral, we've breached their outer hull," the weapons officer reported, excitement in their voice. "We're through their shields." Parker's heart raced with adrenaline. They were winning. But they weren't done yet. This battle was just one chapter of a much larger war. "Keep pushing," Parker commanded. "We're not stopping until their ship is nothing but space debris." As the battle raged, the Galactic Council grew desperate. Thrax, realizing that their superweapon was no longer enough, gave the order to fire the Doomsday Protocol. But would it be too late? Could humanity hold on long enough to stop the weapon, or was this the final, catastrophic moment in their struggle? The Doomsday Protocol. The silence in space was deafening. For a brief moment, the battle seemed to pause. Both sides were battered, but it was clear that the Galactic Council had one final card to play. The enormous warship, once thought to be invulnerable, had taken heavy damage, but its core still glowed with a dangerous, almost unholy light. On board, in the command room, High Counselor Thrax stood with a grim expression, staring at the screen before him. "We have one last chance," Thrax muttered, his voice filled with cold determination. "Activate the Doomsday Protocol. Initiate the countdown." A mechanical voice echoed through the warship, signaling the beginning of the end. Doomsday Protocol initiated. Countdown to activation. 10 minutes. The Council's ultimate weapon was finally online, a devastating device capable of wiping out entire planets with a single blast. Thrax knew this was his last resort. If they couldn't win the battle with firepower, they would win by obliterating the entire human fleet in a single blow. But on the human side, Admiral Parker knew what was happening. The flashing lights on the console indicated something ominous, an energy buildup unlike anything they had ever seen before. It was the Doomsday Protocol, the last weapon of the Galactic Council. "Captain Ramirez," Parker said, his voice cold and commanding, "get me a direct link to all ships. We need to prepare for their final strike." Within moments, the entire fleet was on high alert. Every ship, every crew member, understood what was at stake. This was the moment that would decide their future. On the flagship, the crew scrambled to calculate their next move. The Doomsday Protocol could destroy them all in an instant, and they had no way of countering such a weapon with the limited time left. They had been fighting the Council for too long, and now the fate of Earth rested in their hands. "Admiral, the countdown is almost complete," an officer called out, his voice rising with anxiety. Parker clenched his jaw. His mind raced. What could they do? Their fleet was already battered, their weapons were running low, and the Council's superweapon was nearly ready to fire. There was no way they could stop it directly, but there had to be something they could do. He stood up and paced in front of the command console, deep in thought. Then, a plan began to form. "Ramirez, prepare a squadron for a direct assault on their weapons core. We're going to make a run for it." Captain Ramirez's eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you saying we should attack the Doomsday Protocol itself? The core is heavily protected." "I know," Parker interrupted, his voice steady. "But if we don't, the entire fleet is lost. This is our only shot." The plan was risky, even suicidal, but there was no other option. The human spirit had survived worse, and Parker knew that they couldn't back down now. If they failed to take down the weapon, humanity would be wiped out. The stakes had never been higher. In the heart of the Galactic Council's warship, the Doomsday Protocol continued its countdown. Every second that passed was one closer to total annihilation. The crew, despite their confidence in the weapon, began to feel the weight of the situation. "Countdown. 5 minutes, the mechanical voice announced, its tone emotionless. Thrax stood rigid in front of the control panel, but his hands were trembling. Could the humans really destroy their weapon? Was there any hope left for the Council? Don't let them reach the core, Thrax barked at his officers. We'll finish them before they can make their move. But Thrax knew, deep down, that there was a chance, however slim, that the humans could succeed. The Earth fleet was resourceful, and Parker was no ordinary leader. The Council had underestimated humanity for too long, and now they would have to face the consequences of their arrogance. The human fleet, knowing their time was running out, began their final assault. The ships, battered and scarred from the brutal fighting, surged forward with relentless speed. The plan was to split into smaller groups and launch an all-out attack on the core. It was dangerous, but it was their only hope. On my mark, Parker said, gripping the edge of his console. We break through their defenses. The fleet accelerated, pushing their ships to the limit. The massive Council warship loomed ahead, its weapons still firing, but the humans were no longer just defending. They were attacking with everything they had left. Their smaller, more agile ships darted past the Council defenses, getting closer and closer to the weapon's core. Focus fire on the shield generators, Captain Ramirez shouted. We have to disable them before they can lock onto our ships. Explosions erupted all around them as the human ships fired at the shield generators, slowly breaking through. The Council's warship was growing weaker with every shot. As they closed in on the core, the humans knew there was no turning back. They would either succeed, or they would die trying. It was that simple. Back on Earth, millions of people held their breath. The entire world was watching as their fleet made its final push to stop the Doomsday Protocol. It wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a fight for humanity's future. The Earth had never seen such unity. Every person was holding on to hope that the humans would prevail. The final moments of the battle approached. The countdown on the Council ship hit the 1-minute mark. The Earth fleet was almost in position. It was now or never. Now, Parker shouted. Human ships swarmed the core, unleashing everything they had. A massive explosion rocked the Council warship as the core exploded in a fiery burst of energy. The shockwave rippled through space, and for a moment, it felt like time stood still. In that instant, the weapon was destroyed. The Council's forces were thrown into disarray. Without the power of the Doomsday Protocol, their remaining ships were no match for the humans. The tide had turned. The Galactic Council had lost. But even in victory, Parker knew this was just one battle in a larger war. The Galactic Council would regroup, and there would be more to come. But for today, humanity had won. The Galactic Council's last stand. The battle was over, but the cost was immeasurable. The Earth fleet had struck a devastating blow to the Galactic Council, disabling their Doomsday Protocol. But the war was far from over. The Council, though reeling, was not defeated yet. They were an empire with countless resources, and their defeat in this battle would only fuel their thirst for vengeance. Admiral Parker stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring at the wreckage of the once mighty Council warship. Its massive hull was floating in pieces, slowly drifting into the void of space. The fleet had won, but the cost had been steep. Several ships had been lost, and many more had been heavily damaged. The survivors were left battered and broken, but their spirits were unyielding. They had held their ground when everything seemed lost. Admiral, Captain Ramirez called, her voice steady but filled with concern. The fleet's morale is holding up, but we're stretched thin. We can't keep fighting like this forever. We need reinforcements, or we won't survive the next wave. Parker nodded, rubbing his temples. He knew she was right. The Council would regroup, and when they did, they would come back stronger. The fleet was not prepared for a prolonged war. Supplies were running low, and the humans had no way of knowing when the next wave of Council ships would arrive. We need to get back to Earth, Parker said, his voice hard. We'll have to regroup and rearm. We've taken a blow, but this isn't over. Not by a long shot. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the mood was one of mixed relief and fear. The news of the fleet's victory spread across the globe, but so did the grim reality that the Galactic Council was far from done. The destruction of the Doomsday Protocol had been a massive victory, but it was not the end of the war. People cheered in the streets, but they knew that the real fight was just beginning. In every major city, military leaders were meeting to plan the next move. Earth had never faced an enemy like this before. The Galactic Council was a vast, intergalactic empire with access to technologies humanity could barely comprehend. But humanity was no stranger to adversity. President Morgan stood in front of a group of global leaders, the weight of the situation heavy on her shoulders. We've won a battle, but the war is far from over. The Galactic Council will not rest. We've seen what they're capable of, and they'll come for us with everything they have. But we have one advantage. They underestimate us. They underestimate the strength of humanity. They think we're weak, divided, fragile. It's time to show them what we can really do. The leaders nodded in agreement. It was time to prepare for the next phase of the war. Humanity had proven that they could stand up to the Council, but they needed to be ready for the next phase. Earth's defenses were being strengthened, and a new wave of soldiers and ships was being prepared for deployment. Back in space, the Earth fleet had made its way back toward their home planet. The damage to their ships was extensive, but they had survived. They were battered, but the fire in their hearts was stronger than ever. As they neared Earth's orbit, Parker stared out the window at the vastness of space. His mind was still focused on the next battle. The Council would not forget this defeat, and while they might have crippled their Doomsday Protocol, the Council had other weapons. More ships, more strategies, more ways to attack. He turned to Ramirez, who had joined him at the observation window. "What do you think they'll do next?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," she said, her gaze still fixed on the stars. "But I know they'll come for us again. We've just shown them that we're not easy targets. We've earned their respect and their wrath." Back on Earth, President Morgan was on the phone with military commanders, coordinating the next steps. The people of Earth had shown courage, but they were still vulnerable. They had no idea when or where the Council would strike next. All they knew was that the fight was not over. The war had only just begun. "We need to start building a stronger fleet," one of the commanders said, "and we need more resources. The next phase is going to be a test of everything we have." "Agreed," Morgan replied. "But we also need to start training new recruits. The war isn't just being fought in space. It's being fought on the ground, too. We need to be ready for everything." The Council won't hold back next time. As Earth prepared for what was to come, a new sense of unity began to form. People from all walks of life were joining the military, preparing for the inevitable return of the Galactic Council. The world had come together in a way that had never been seen before. Humanity was stronger, more focused, and more determined than ever. But even as they worked to rebuild their forces, a terrible reality loomed over them. The Council was still out there, waiting, preparing. And when they returned, they would bring their full might to bear. The battle for Earth was not over. The war was just beginning. As the Earth fleet returned to its home planet, the fleet's ships docked one by one. The crew members disembarked, weary but resolute. They knew that their victory in the battle was only temporary. They had given the Council a taste of what humanity was capable of, but the real war was yet to come. Admiral Parker stood at the edge of the landing platform, watching the fleet's ships dock. The repairs would take time, but the humans had shown their strength, and as long as they had hope, they would keep fighting. "Prepare for the next phase," Parker said, his voice low but full of determination. "The Council won't rest until they've wiped us out. We'll make sure they regret ever thinking they could." The final confrontation. Earth was preparing for war once again. After the destruction of the Doomsday Protocol and the temporary defeat of the Galactic Council, The atmosphere on Earth was one of both resolve and dread. The war that had begun with an invasion was far from over. The Galactic Council, their pride wounded, were regrouping and scheming for revenge. And humanity was ready. Admiral Parker stood at the forefront, staring at the holographic map displayed before him. The situation was dire. Despite their victory, Earth's fleet was still struggling to rebuild, still vulnerable. The Council's forces were vast, and they were not going to sit idly by. They would return with more ships, more weapons, and more cunning than ever before. But Parker was determined. He could feel the weight of the fate of humanity on his shoulders. "Admiral," Captain Ramirez said, her voice steady but with a hint of concern, "our fleet is as ready as it can be. But we still don't know where the Council will strike next." Parker looked at the map, zooming in on the edge of Earth's solar system. The Council's forces were spread across several sectors, and their next move was a mystery. But one thing was clear: they would strike soon, and they would come with everything they had. "We can't predict their movements," Parker said, "but we know this: they will come for Earth. And when they do, we'll be ready." Back on Earth, the world was holding its breath. The battle for survival had already claimed so much. The news had spread across the globe that the Galactic Council had regrouped and was preparing for a final decisive blow. Humanity's hope rested on the shoulders of the fleet, but fear still lingered. President Morgan, standing before a room full of world leaders, addressed the situation with a level of urgency no one had ever seen before. "The time for preparation is over," she said. "We've shown the Council that we can fight back. But now we must show them that we will never surrender. They've underestimated us, and we've proven them wrong. But they won't stop until we're destroyed. We must be ready for whatever they bring." The leaders nodded. Every nation on Earth had come together in this moment, pooling resources, technology, and manpower for a final stand against the Council. It was a fight not just for survival, but for the very future of humanity. No one knew what would happen next, but they all understood one thing: they could not let the Council win. In the depths of space, the Council's warship, a monstrous behemoth, loomed in the shadows of an asteroid field. Thrax, the High Counselor, paced angrily back and forth, his mind racing. The failure of the Doomsday Protocol had shattered his pride. The humans had dared to strike back, to stand against the might of the Galactic Council, but they had underestimated the resolve of the Council. "Prepare for the final assault," Thrax ordered, his voice cold and commanding. "We will crush them once and for all." The vast warship stirred to life. Every gun and missile, every turret and laser cannon, hummed with deadly energy. The Council had spent months preparing for this moment. Their ships were fully armed, and their fleets were poised for one final, all-out attack. This time, there would be no mercy. The humans would learn that they had made a mistake in fighting the Council. But even as Thrax issued the final orders for the attack, he could not shake the feeling that something had changed. The humans were different now. They were not the weak, divided species they had once been. They had united in the face of the greatest threat to their survival. And now, they were more dangerous than ever. The fleet was ready. The human fleet had undergone repairs, but more importantly, it had undergone a transformation. Every officer, every soldier, every crew member now fought with a singular purpose: to protect Earth at all costs. The Council's fleet would arrive soon, and when it did, they would face an enemy unlike any they had ever seen. Admiral Parker stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out into the black void of space. His face was grim, but his eyes burned with determination. "We've come this far, and we will not back down. This is it, the final confrontation. We take the fight to the Council, and we end it once and for all." Captain Ramirez nodded, her expression matching his resolve. "We've trained for this. We've fought for this. We'll do whatever it takes to protect Earth." Parker turned to the crew and said, "This is our home, our people. Today, we fight for them. Today, we fight for humanity." As the two fleets closed in on each other, the tension in space was palpable. The human fleet moved into position, every ship ready for the fight of their lives. The Galactic Council's warships appeared on the horizon, massive and menacing, their weapons primed for destruction. The final battle had begun. The first shots were fired. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as the two fleets clashed in a violent storm of lasers, missiles, and energy blasts. Ships from both sides were torn apart in the opening moments, but the humans fought with everything they had. Every ship, every soldier, every officer pushed forward, unwilling to give an inch. Admiral Parker barked orders, directing the fleet with a precision that only someone who had been through the worst could manage. Concentrate fire on their lead ships. Take them down before they can regroup. The human ships darted and weaved, avoiding the deadly barrage of the Council's weapons, while retaliating with devastating force. The battle was intense, but the humans were holding their ground. They had something the Council didn't: the will to win, no matter the cost. As the battle raged on, the human fleet began to push back the Council's forces, one ship at a time. But the war was far from over. The Council's fleet was large, and they had reinforcements on the way. But for the first time, the humans knew they could win. They had fought for so long, and now they could taste victory.